You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
You say social media often creates echo chambers, reinforcing our existing beliefs and biases.
I love to think I know something and then somebody lets me know I really didn't know what I was talking about. Saying I don't know is very freeing.
Charlamagne the God is back. The man who's not afraid to ask the tough questions and drop truth bombs. Known for his ability to interview politicians and celebrities with the same unique point of view, he helps drive the national conversations. I'm talking about race, culture, politics. He's best known for co-hosting iHeartRadio's The Breakfast Club. I've been a guest there multiple times. It's always a good hang and a really meaningful conversation. We talk about things that matter. He's also the CEO of the Black Effect Podcast Network, his own production company, and co-hosts the popular podcast, The Brilliant Idiots. I'm going to have links to all of that on drphil.com and meritstreetmedia.com. He's the author of the New York Times best-selling Black Privilege, the global bestseller Shook One, and he hates small talk. He just doesn't like small talk, and we're going to discuss that today for sure. He's got a new book. This new book is really interesting. Get Honest or Die Lying. I've read this book. You're going to read this book. You want to buy 2 copies of this book and save yourself the trip or save yourself having to ship something again, because you're going to want to read it and you're going to want to give one to somebody that you care about. This is medicine for society, and God, do we need medicine for this society right now. So without further ado, welcome. Good to have you back.
Dr. Phil, thank you for having me, brother. How are you?
I am well. Where are we talking to you from today?
I'm in Jersey. I'm home in Jersey.
All right, cool. So you've written this new book. What got you tackling these subjects? I love what you're writing about here. And I mean that not because we're friends, but because I like what you're talking about.
Well, I'm always writing. So my last book came out in 2018, Shook One, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me. Thank you, for having me on and to support that book as well. But 6 years later, I've just been constantly journaling and just really just observing the world. So this book is really just my take on just things that I've been seeing in society. And what I started to, come back to was, number one, a theme about social media and, the impact that I think social media is having on us as a society. And I went on this spiritual retreat earlier this year, back in February. And one of the things that came up for me was, stop lying to yourself and stop volunteering those lies to other people. Because I feel like that's what everybody in society is doing nowadays, especially because of social media. Because, you wake up in the morning, it doesn't matter who you are. If you got 100 followers, 200 followers, 300 followers, 3 million, you feel like you got to perform for people. So you're never truly getting, who people really are anymore. Like, everybody's approaching life with a mask, with this persona. And so it's just like, I don't feel like things are going to ever, really move forward in our society the way we want them to, unless people, start being honest with themselves first. And when you're honest with yourself, then you'll volunteer that truth to others, as opposed to volunteering those lies to others. And, the why small talk sucks, came into play because, I just feel like, man, we don't even know how to have big conversations anymore, Dr. Phil. I feel like everybody's so focused on confrontation over conversation. And it's like everybody has to pick a side as opposed to sitting down and having a discussion and maybe coming up with some solutions to these problems. And, everything is weighted on the same scale nowadays. Like the micros are on the same scale as the macros, and we're acting like these things weigh the same. And so when it comes time for us to have actual big discussions about things, we don't even know how, if we even choose to at all.
I think you're exactly right. You talk about the spiritual retreat earlier this year, but I think there's a thread that's all the way back to Shook One, because back then, it seems like you had some real honest conversations with yourself that were reflected in that book. And I thought you took a pretty bold step to get really transparent about mental health issues and anxiety and that sort of thing, which is not an easy thing to talk about in the Black community. And you talked about it openly, honestly, and I thought really moved the needle in that community. And now you're saying here, these years later, that you got to be honest with yourself before you can be honest with other people. It seems like that started quite a while ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my daddy used to always tell me, man, I was raised in Most Corner, South Carolina, in a rural area. So my daddy used to always tell me the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. But the other thing that he said to me that always stuck with me was like, when you lie to people, you're not lying to people, you're lying to yourself. So I would tell him a lie, and he would say, "You're not lying to me, you lying to yourself." And that did something to me, when I was very young, to where, man, it's like I can't do it. Like I need you to be honest with me, at all times, and I need to be honest with people at all times, because I want to always deal with the reality of the situation, Dr. Phil. Like you're a doctor. If somebody comes to you and their foot is hurting, but they're telling you that it's their hand, if you are sitting there trying to focus on their hand, you'll never focus on their foot. So you'll never ever focus and fix what's really, hurting a person. So it's like, for me, I have to approach things with honesty, especially, myself, because, we always talk about keeping it real. It's easy to keep it real with other people, right? Like you can look at somebody and tell them what's wrong with them, or tell them what you don't like about them, tell them you don't like what they're wearing. But boy, looking in that mirror and having that same conversation with yourself is a very difficult task for some people. For me, it is not at all.
Yeah, you talk about that in here a lot. Let's talk about social media in that regard, because it seems like we've got a really kind of narcissistic element to this society where people think if they're brushing their teeth, they got to have a camera on them and post it. And it makes us feel like we're performing all the time. Do you really think that has gotten people to wear a social mask instead of being authentic even worse than it was before all this social media dropped on us in like 09, 010?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like people care more about their digital lives than they do their real lives. That's actually a really big pet peeve of mine. And people, it's almost like when you tell people that social media is not good for them, it's like we're the old people telling folks to get off their lawn, get off your lawn. Like we're telling people to get off the internet. And that's like the 2024 version of get off my lawn, but it's true though. Like, people need to disconnect, from social media, because we're losing ourselves. Like, it makes you feel like you have to perform. It makes you feel like, you have to feed, your followers. It makes you feel like you have to show up and pretend to live this life that, you're not even living. Like, I have a good friend, his name is Stephen Furtick. He's a pastor. We're from the same hometown. And, he always says that, social media is everybody's highlight reel. And so we are comparing our real lives that everybody else's highlight reel. Nobody shows you the process on social media, Dr. Phil. They just show you the end result. And the end result might not even be their end result. You really got people walking down the street, and it might be a Phantom or a Maybach truck, on the side of the road, parked somewhere. They'll take a picture in front of it and post it like it's theirs. And then it'll be a bunch of people in the comments, putting 100 emojis and saying, "Oh man, you motivating me and you're inspiring me." That's not even that person's car. So it's too easy to pretend, on social media. And like I was always told, God can't bless who you pretend to be, man.
Well, I've had influencers on my show before that have fessed straight up that they actually go to this place out in Santa Monica that has a fake fuselage of a private jet. It's just in a warehouse. They rent it out in 15-minute intervals, and they go out there and get in that wearing like stuff that they're headed for the beach or stuff that they're headed for a ski resort. And they take all of these pictures like they have this big glamorous life. They save them up and post them throughout the year. And then people compare themselves to that fantasy life. And so they come out on the short end of the stick because they're saying, what a loser am I? I don't fly around in private jets. I don't go to these cool places like that. So by comparison, I'm terrible. I just don't get there.
And that's where the anxiety comes in. That's where the depression comes in. That's where the insecurity comes in, the imposter syndrome, because you're literally looking at these people and you're saying to yourself, man, I'm not on the level I need to be at. Why are all of these people doing so much better than me? But the reality is they're not. And we need to stop calling those people influencers and just call them what they are, liars.
Yeah.
They're just straight up liars. And that's why the book is called Get Honest or Die Lying. Like, if you don't start being honest with yourself, you're going to die a liar.
Hey, it's Dr. Phil here. You know, I bought my first gold coin over 25 years ago. I did it to protect my family and our financial future. Back then, we were living in uncertain times, and the national debt was growing larger every day. And it's similar today. Higher taxes, government debt, and an unstable economy. It's more important than ever to buy gold and silver. Like you, I cherish my faith, my family, and my financial freedom. That's why I recommend you get the Wealth Protection Kit from Goldco, the top-rated precious metals company in the country. It shows you how to diversify and protect your retirement savings. Thankfully, with Goldco, you get the peace of mind that thousands of their customers have protected their money with gold and silver. They are A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and have earned over 6,000 five-star reviews. Right now, you could qualify for up to 10% instant match in bonus silver while supplies last. So call Goldco at 855-969-GOLD to learn more. That's 855-969-GOLD. Across this great country, from coast to coast, you've told me about the crossroads we're facing. Your sentiments have never been more relevant, more urgent in focus than over the last few days when we have experienced a very dark chapter in our country's history with the attempted assassination of a candidate and former president of the United States. It was concern for exactly that kind of crisis growing from the divide in America that moved me to write We've Got Issues, How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. This book isn't just a conversation starter. It's a roadmap for standing strong in the face of adversity, crisis, and for embracing our core values when they're needed most. It won't be politicians that puts this country on the right path. It will be us, you and me. We've Got Issues is talking about real strategies for real people, dealing with real issues that urgently matter, from navigating the complexities of today's polarized world to fortifying our families with hope and safety. If you've ever found yourself wondering about the direction we're headed or what you can do to make a difference, then this book is for you. We've Got Issues isn't just my call to action, it's our call to action. So let's turn the tide together by embracing such principles as working hard to understand the way others see things and committing to treating yourself and others with dignity and respect. I invite you to come home to our core values and re-embrace the American ideals of self-determination and self-governance. Get your copy of We've Got Issues by me, Dr. Phil. Available now everywhere books are sold. Yeah. So how do we get people to focus on solving problems instead of trying to win arguments? Actually being real instead of trying to live this masquerade all the time. What's your conclusion? How do we get people to do that?
Well, number one, Dr. Phil, we got to stop being afraid. And what I mean when I say stop being afraid, there's so many of us that are afraid to give our honest opinions nowadays because we are afraid of the backlash from social media. And that's just the reality of the situation. People are afraid to be attacked on Twitter, to be attacked on these blog sites, to be attacked on the internet, simply because you choose to have an opinion that's not like everybody else. The reason, you see everybody resorting to these different extremes now is because when you are on one side of the aisle or, when you are a part of one community, there's safety in that group. So as long as you think like that group, as long as you talk like that group, as long as you move like that group, whatever opinion you put out there, there's always going to be somebody that has your back on that opinion. You know this, Dr. Phil. It is scary to step out there on your own and to say something that nobody else is saying, or to actually say what you really feel. If what you really feel, is different than what everybody else may be thinking about the subject. And that takes real courage. So people have to stop being afraid, of just having folks disagree with them. And if you can have a conversation and not be afraid of folks disagreeing with you, then I think, all of us will be able to sit down, look each other in the eye, have some conversations and say, man, I'm not trying to win this argument. I'm not trying to, slam dunk on this person just to score points with the social media crowd. I just really want to try to actually learn. And I think that's very hard for people to do because everybody thinks they know nowadays. So if you think you know, you're not going to be open to learning.
Well, only 23% of adults use Twitter, and 80% of that content is posted by 10% of the users. So you've only got 23% using it, and only 10% of them put up most of the content. So you really have a small group of people. It's like the tail wagging the dog. Everybody runs scared of trending negatively on Twitter or X or whatever. But I wonder if some of that is legitimate, because if they get after somebody, they start calling their job to get them fired, or if they're in business, they call their suppliers, they call their advertisers, they call people and get them to boycott. I had a woman on the show, Dr. Carol Hooven from Harvard University. She went to Harvard and then she was a professor there for 20 years. She came on my show and Fox and Friends, and she just reported the data on trans athletes competing with biological athletes. Wasn't even her research. She just said, I study this area, so I'm going to report what the data is. And she just said the data says that you'll never get a level playing field. I don't care how much testosterone blocker you take. You'll never get a level playing field. That's what the data is from a meta-analysis of 50 plus studies. And they labeled her transphobic, drummed her out of that university after 20 years, said she was peddling hate speech, was transphobic, and drummed her out of the university and absolutely ruined her career just for reporting data. And she's actually very supportive of the transgender community. Didn't matter. It was like, got one, here we go, and she's gone. So I wonder if some of that is sadly legitimate.
Yeah, I'm sure it is legitimate, but what I would tell people who do things like that, you got to understand that that's a circular firing squad. So eventually, everybody's going to take everybody out because if you dare to have an opinion about anything, or you dare to even objectively study something, the nuance of something, and you are able to see both sides, and like you said, that woman was just reading the data based off something that she saw. So she's just presenting another side of the argument. If you dare to just present the other side of the argument, now somebody's going to be calling your job to have you fired. I don't respect people like that, Dr. Phil. What I like for people to do is if you believe something, you should be able to debate that something. You should be able to talk about that something. You should be able to say, hey, I hear your data, but this is what my research shows me, or this is what my lived experience shows me. If all you do is rush to go get somebody canceled, I don't think you have much of an argument, and I don't think you probably believe what you say you believe.
3 times as many people today are less apt to speak up than in 1950. That's got to be because of social media and the internet. They're just not willing to speak up.
Yeah, I don't have any problem, having conversations with anybody, but I can totally understand why people would have reservations, in this era, simply because you have a bunch of anonymous people that you don't even know attacking you via social media, or calling your job or emailing your job. You don't even know who these people are. Like I remember I went to Harvard one time, man. This was some years ago. It was like maybe, I don't know, 9, 10 years ago, maybe even a little longer. And, some of the students on Harvard's campus, wanted to boycott me. And I was like, why you want to boycott? And they were saying, because, you're transphobic. And I was like, well, why am I transphobic? They said I was transphobic and homophobic. So I said, why am I transphobic and homophobic? They said, because of your comments about Rachel Dolezal and Caitlyn Jenner. What I said was, because if you remember when Caitlyn Jenner came out, the very next week, Rachel Dolezal, who considers herself a transracial, came out. And so I simply said, I don't understand how people can, understand where Caitlyn Jenner is coming from, but not understand where Rachel Dolezal is coming from. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm just simply saying you should hear her out. Like,
Fair
you
question.
can't be so quick. You can't be so quick to dismiss her. And for whatever reason, the kids said that was me being transphobic towards Caitlyn Jenner. Oh, and the other thing I said was, I was watching Caitlyn Jenner. I think she was being interviewed by Diane Sawyer. I believe it was Diane Sawyer, and I think it was one of her first interviews. And she said she was still attracted to women. So I'm just, I'm trying to be progressive and trying to keep up with the language. So I'm like, oh, well, if she's attracted to women, that means that she's a lesbian. If she identifies as a woman and she's still attracted to women, I guess she would be considered a lesbian now. Oh my God. They were acting, you're so stupid. You're so ignorant. Why? I'm asking questions. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to keep up with what's going on. But they were protesting me because of that. But because I simply said to them, hey, let's have the conversation. Instead of, protesting me, I'm going to be here anyway. The kids that want to see me are going to be here to see me. The kids that are protesting, how about coming here and let's have a conversation? And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up having a conversation. Now, do I think that, them thinking I was transphobic was ridiculous? Yes. Do I think it was stupid? Yes. But we still had the conversation.
You had to work at it, but at least they were willing to sit down.
That's right.
In chapter 3 of your book, and the book we're talking about, by the way, let me just shamelessly plug this as we go along, Get Honest or Die Lying, Why Small Talk Sucks, Charlamagne the God. It's his new book, and I highly recommend it. I personally endorse this book. I personally endorse the message of this book. I think that it's thoughtful. I think it's very transparent. It's written from the heart, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. And I think anybody with common sense is going to agree with it. But whether you do or you don't, you can bet one thing. It's written authentically and from the heart. And in chapter 3, you talk about the pursuit of ignorance. And you say in there that ignorance isn't, this is a quote, ignorance isn't just a lack of knowledge. It's often a choice to avoid the truth. And God, when I read that, I thought, I wish I'd said that. I'm going to take credit for that when you're not around. But talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Because, people go out of their way nowadays to create false narratives. They go out of their way nowadays to create fake news. Like, they literally go out of their ways nowadays to create these alternative facts. Like, I like, for example, I'm a person that's critical of both political parties, right? I'm not on either side. I'm an issues person.
You and me both.
If somebody's doing something good, I'll give them credit for it. If somebody's doing something bad, I'll acknowledge that, both sides, right? But I can go on a platform. This has actually happened a lot over the last few weeks, especially since I've been on my book tour. But I can go on a platform. I was on This Week ABC with John Carl, and I'm having a conversation. And I said, I think Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. I said, I think that, he led an attempted coup in this country. He wanted to terminate the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. That's just unpatriotic, like bad news. And then, John Carl says to me, well, Joe Biden says those things. How come Joe Biden, when he says these things, people don't listen? And I said, well, because Joe Biden is an uninspiring candidate with no main character energy. So people, he really don't listen to him. Fox News took that one clip and, ran it for 3 days. Charlamagne the God says Joe Biden is an uninspiring candidate with no main character energy. And, one thing I like about Fox, and even me saying that is controversial, right? For whatever reason. The thing I like about Fox, but I have no problem, even if it's people that I disagree with, I have no problem acknowledging the things that they do right. They push a narrative better than anybody.
Yeah.
So if their narrative is, hey, Black people are, the polls show that Black people are starting to gravitate towards Trump and he might have 22% of the Black vote this year, right? If that is the narrative, me, being a Black man and saying something like that, and somebody who has openly supported, Vice President Kamala Harris, when she ran with Joe Biden in 2020, they'll take that quote of me being critical of Joe Biden and run it over and over and over and over and over and over and over because reinforces to them the narrative that, hey, Black people are starting to, be spoiled about the Democratic Party. And that's not the case for me. For me, I'm just one of the people that is just part of the exhausted majority. I'm just tired of politics, period. So I'm calling it how I see it. So what happens is the right will put that narrative out, and then the left responds to that narrative instead of going to actually watch the interview to see what I said in full. Because if they were smart, they could take what I said about Trump and push that as their narrative. But instead, they end up attacking me and attacking the narrative that Fox created. And next thing you know, Charlamagne the God supports Donald Trump. Now, let me tell you the flip side of that, Dr. Phil. I don't run from people, right? I'm not one of these people who will say I'm not ever going on conservative media. So I go on Fox. I was on Brian Kilmeade's show. I was on Gutfeld's show. I said the same exact things I've always said about Donald Trump on those shows. And guess what Fox did? Ran the accurate headline. Charlamagne the God says Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Now, then other people are saying, Charlamagne says on Fox News, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. I'm on Bill Maher's show this past Friday. I say the same thing about Donald Trump because Bill was just like, why won't you endorse, somebody? I've heard you be critical of Trump, but why won't you endorse, Biden? And I'm like, I don't want to, number one, right? I'm voting my interests, I'm voting my issues, but I am voting to preserve democracy. So I say that. Now the headline is Charlamagne the God seems to signal that he's voting for President Biden. People run from the truth. And not only do they run from the truth, they create these false narratives about you. Like, I'm not MAGA. You know what I mean? Like I'm not telling people. Like, I went on The View and Sonny said, hey, you said you don't want to endorse President Biden, but now is not the time to sit out the election. I said, I never said I was sitting out. I never said I was sitting out. I never said I wasn't voting. I've gone on these platforms and said the same thing over and over and over and over. I am voting to preserve democracy. I am an issues person. I am an interest person. And so I am going to vote the person who I think can best preserve democracy. But, for whatever reason, that truth that I'm speaking is not good enough for them. So they got to create, a false narrative. And to me, that is the pursuit of ignorance.
Do you enjoy games? I'd like you to take out your cell phones and download a game called Solitaire Grand Harvest. That way you can join in on the fun. Now, Robin and I are about to have some fun here. And one of our favorites is the great app game Solitaire Grand Harvest.
I'm so in love with this game. This is not your old solitaire game. It's so much fun. It's challenging, and the little farm animal characters are adorable. Now, we enjoy playing all night long.
This is also a great way to unwind and give yourself an incredibly important mental break.
Yes, and even just a few minutes each day can make all the difference.
All right. So challenge your family and friends or enjoy the fun alone. Just go to the App Store or Google Play to download the app for free. Solitaire Grand Harvest. That way you can join in on the fun. Yeah, they're running their own agenda. I mean, that's a perfect example of what you say in Chapter 3, that it's often a choice to avoid the truth. So they got to fill something in, and what they fill in is what they wish was true. And
right.
What they want you to do, and that's just not the deal. I'm just glad to hear you say it, because I say the same thing, and I think everybody should say the same thing. I don't try to trap people into agreeing with me or not agreeing with me. It's just tell me what you think. Tell me why you think it. I'll have questions about it. We'll let people make up their own mind whether they think it's worthy of consideration, worthy of putting into their decision-making process.
And that's how you burst the bubble that a lot of people live in. That's how you shatter the walls of the echo chamber. Like, I'm the type of person, I don't get upset, for people when they have certain choices that aren't like mine. What I like to do is I ask questions. I'll say, well, why do you, support that person? Or why did you make that decision? I want to have, the conversation. Like, a lot of times when you hear me speak, the things that I'm saying are things that I've heard, from everyday Americans. That's why I love doing morning radio. I love doing morning radio because that working class, everyday American is calling into that station every day. That's why I love doing, so much community work and so much community service, because you get to go out there and talk to everyday working class people. That's why I love, going out and doing book signings, because, the people that come to your book signings, those are real people having real conversations with you. And a lot of times when you're getting that real information from people and, you express that over the airwaves, people think you're trying to push an agenda when you're not. Like that happened to me in January as well. I remember I was doing an interview with a guy from Fox, Joseph, who does the digital over there, and he asked me a simple question. He said, "Do I think the border is going to be an issue come November?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" And the reason I said that, Dr. Phil, is because of the conversations I was having with activists in Chicago who were telling me about the fact how they were upset that the migrants were coming over and getting more resources than people in Chicago who are homeless, people in Chicago who are poor and disenfranchised on the South Side. I was talking to people in New York who were upset that Mayor Adams had had let a lot of the migrants stay in a school overnight and made the kids stay home and do remote learning for a day. I was having conversations with people in New York City who were talking to me about their neighborhoods being ran over, being taken over by gangs, that were coming from across the border. And when I'm hearing these conversations and I'm expressing that, they MSNBC said I was spreading MAGA messaging. I'm like, MAGA? This is regular everyday Black people that I'm talking to, Black people, brown people that I'm having conversations with. They're not MAGA. So I think, a lot of things that people try to politicize, Dr. Phil, a lot of things people try to politicize, they don't realize that it's regular, everyday working class people having these conversations. Now, months later, that was January. Now it's June. And what's one of the biggest issues? The border.
Yeah, of course. And,
so
and it's
clearly,
getting
right.
worse. Yeah. In chapter 27, you call it echo. You say the echo chamber effect of social media is really important, and and this is a quote: "Social media often creates echo chambers, reinforcing our existing beliefs and biases." That is a profound statement. Let's unpack that a minute. Social media creates echo chambers, reinforcing our existing beliefs and biases. Now, fact check me on this, but it's something like up in the 80% of young people. And by young, I'm talking 18, 19, 20s, and anybody happy to fact check me on this, and I'll put the exact numbers in on the webpage. 80-something% of those people get 100% of their news from TikTok or some social media platform. They have certain places they go to get it. You talk about an echo chamber. How are they ever going to do critical thinking if they don't hear the other side?
Man, that's you preaching to the choir right now, Dr. Phil. I say that all the time. Like, it's like, I don't even know who people are talking to anymore. And that's what I mean when I say we don't know how to solve problems, because how can you solve a problem if you truly don't know what the problem is? You think you know what the problem is, and then you get online and you only talk to, your group of people, and all of y'all feel the same way about something. And since all of y'all feel the same way about something, you think that's the way it has to be. And I really believe one of the reasons a lot of folks don't like to talk to other people, Dr. Phil, is because they're afraid to either be wrong or afraid to have what they believe challenged. I love changing my mind. Like, I love to think I know something and then have a conversation with somebody that lets me know I really didn't know what I was talking about. Or, oh, that person made me look at it in a different way. That person gave me another perspective. That's what life is about, I would think.
Well, yeah, it's been said you only learn when you prove yourself wrong. You know what you know or what you think you know, and you only expand that when you prove yourself wrong and have to add something to your knowledge base. If you don't ever add anything to your knowledge base, then all you know is what you think you know.
That's right. 100%.
You talk about solving problems. I wonder, now I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but I really wonder if we really have problem solvers assigned to solving our problems. Some of these problems, like the border or like the economy or like homelessness, I really wonder if the people we have assigned to solving those problems are really interested in solving the problem as opposed to keeping their jobs.
Oh man, I think about that all the time, and I agree with you. I think that some people it's like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, right? Like Wile E. Coyote chases the Roadrunner all the time, all the time, all the time. And I remember there was an episode where he actually caught the Roadrunner, but when he did, he didn't even know what to do with him.
Like the dog that caught the car.
And so he let him go because his existence was chasing the Roadrunner. He wasn't really trying to catch the Roadrunner. He clearly was not really trying to catch the Roadrunner. And it's the same thing with these people you're talking about. You cannot tell me, Dr. Phil, that after all of these years here in this society, that some of these basic problems we don't have enough smart, intelligent people here that can solve them. I really think that there's people out there who just take great pride in keeping the problem going, because to what you just said, it makes them always have job security. Always.
Yeah, and it seems so stupid to me because if you get somebody that comes in and solves a problem, a big societal problem, they're not going to work themselves out of a job. Somebody's going to come along and say, hey, we need to get that guy over here. He solved that problem. Let's put him on this problem. He's a problem solver. The problem is interchangeable. That guy's a problem solver. She's a problem solver. Let's get them over here to work on this problem. They're not going to work themselves out of a job. They're going to work themselves into being the number one problem solver.
That's right. And it goes back to what you said about information, right? Like, you never really truly learn something until you admit that you're wrong. So you're constantly adding new things to your repertoire. If you're just the person that's, there to act like you're solving a problem, but you're not, and you're just essentially keeping the problem going, like nothing new is happening. Like if you actually solve a problem, then guess what? It's like going to another level in a video game. So there'll be another challenge. There'll be something new that comes along.
Yeah, we're not going to run out of shit to do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Donald Whitehead, chairman of the National Coalition of Homelessness?
No, I don't know him. I'd like to know him. No?
Yeah, great guy. He's been homeless, and he's now head of the Coalition for Homelessness, and his approach is home first. He believes in getting them off the street and putting them in a home. And then the other side is, oh, wait a minute, you got to get them off of drugs. They got to get themselves to where they earn that right, et cetera, et cetera. I look at this, and he's one of the few guys I've ever seen that is an actual problem solver. You would love this guy. He is an interesting guy, and he's not marketing it right because they don't just say, here's a free house. That's not the deal. They do have standards. They do monitor them. They do follow up on them, and they do have good outcome criteria, but he's not marketing it right. So, which I tell him all the time, I'm a friend behind his back. But if they market it better, he's one of those guys that's a problem solver. You need to meet him sometime. You'd really like him.
I'd love to talk to him.
I'll get you his info. You should have him on the show sometime. He's a super guy. One of the things I love in your book when you're talking about true intentions, understanding aligning with one's true intentions, and this is another quote, aligning with our true intention requires honesty and self-reflection. You actually had these conversations with yourself before and as you were writing this book to have some honesty and self-reflection. And you say you came out of it with a dose of humility. What happened?
Well, I think the dose of humility comes in just, being very self-aware. But if I'm putting it all out there, I did ayahuasca.
Yeah.
I'm a person that's always challenged myself all of the time anyway. I'm always holding myself accountable. I'm always, having self-awareness with myself, probably a little too much. But, one thing about, being on that medicine like ayahuasca, man, Dr. Phil, every single trauma you've ever had, every single trauma you may have caused is literally spread out on the table. It's like walking down Canal Street in New York and seeing all of those people who got all the purses and the watches on the blanket. Like it's right there. And it's like God is saying, no, look at this, deal with it. I've been going to therapy since 2016. I felt like I had, more of a breakthrough in those 3 days than I've had in, all of those years of therapy. And it just kind of, when I say humility, it kind of just puts you in a space where you realize there's definitely something else greater than you, whether you believe in God or not. I've always been a God-fearing person, but, for me, it was a confirmation that there's absolutely something out there that's greater than you. There's absolutely a spirit realm that exists around us all. I absolutely know that, I have great ancestors that are covering me and, guiding me. And to me, that just makes you feel very small, but also very big at the same time.
I get that. I get that totally. Did you have guides?
Yeah. I had shamans there, playing the music, leading us, the whole way. But it really was a journey that, you have to go on by yourself. Even though I was in a room with people and I was in a room with my wife and everybody, but it still was a journey that you're on by yourself. And it's a very painfully peaceful journey as well, because it's not like anything's trying to harm you. It's just trying to make you aware. And I think that's one thing that people are afraid to do. That's why, I keep talking about get honest or die lying. People are afraid to really be aware of what they already know, Dr. Phil. Just think about it. People are afraid to be aware of what they already know. We go to sleep with ourselves. We wake up with ourselves. We know every single thing about ourselves, but somehow we're still afraid of it. Like we're still afraid of who we are.
Yeah, it's like if you say it out loud, it gets real. If you just kind of turn away from it. I've got a buddy that's a member of a SWAT team in Dallas, and under all of his other gear, he wears a T-shirt that says, "You can run, but you'll just die tired."
Hilarious.
That's how I feel about getting away from yourself. You can run, but you'll just die tired. You can't escape you. I don't care what you do. You cannot escape you.
I say that in the book. You can't run from yourself.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally what I'm trying to tell people. Get honest or die lying. What you just said is even better. Get honest, or you're going to die lying and tired.
Yeah.
like you cannot outrun yourself. Like, if you don't deal with your trauma will ultimately deal with you. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell anybody what to do with themselves until I fix what's in me first.
Yeah. You have a chapter called Imposterism. You say the imposter syndrome affects many, but recognizing it is the first step towards overcoming it. And I thought this was such a profound observation, because I think so many people feel like they're masquerading, feel like they're one step ahead of being found out. And they live with that all their lives. Like, I'm not who I really present myself to be. I'm one step ahead of being found out. If you ever get real with yourself, you don't have to live with that fear anymore.
That's right. Because if you're real with yourself, you won't be afraid to say, I don't know. You won't be afraid, to be embarrassed. Like, I'm never embarrassed, by what I don't know. I'm embarrassed by what I refuse to learn. And so that's why I get so upset at a lot of these academics nowadays and these people who have these PhDs in their names, and no offense, but having the DR in front of their name, because all of these people that are so, academically smart, it's like they have no lived experience, and they're afraid to actually, learn anything new, because they approach every situation like they know it all already. And it's like, especially when it comes to like societal issues, man, I say it all the time. You got a lot of people talking about people that they never talk to.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't sit around and talk about what's going on in the world and talk about what's going on in certain communities if you've never actually went to speak to those people. One thing that you did, Dr. Phil, that I respect so much, you went to the border.
Yeah.
You went to go see what was actually going on. That gives you a different perspective than a lot of people.
Man, it was an eye-opener, I'll tell you. I went to Israel because I wanted to see what was going on over there. I walked through those kibbutz that had been attacked and talked to the people who watched their families get slaughtered. I feel like I can't talk about it if I haven't seen it, if I haven't been there and stood in the shoes and talked to the people. Other than that, it's just an academic exercise.
That's right. And honestly, I've heard people, I know people who've been to Palestine and been to Israel. And I just listen when they're telling me things, because they have more experience than I do on any of those situations, you know? And it is just weird to me when I see people like, you know, just speak about things they have no knowledge of with like extreme confidence.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Not always right, but never in doubt, right?
Yeah. And it's usually, I'm telling you, it's usually a lot of the academics, because a lot of them nowadays, they too are getting a lot of their information, you know, from social media. And so being that they're getting a lot of the information from social media, what they're really feeding themselves is narratives. And they will really push those narratives as if those narratives were facts. And people will listen to them because of, you know, what their educational background is. But to me, they're the most ignorant type, because you're not even really digging deeper into the story. You're just, you know, going off the headline.
We talked about your chapter 27 echo, and right now it's like nobody in America can be convinced of anything anymore. It's like everybody is so locked in, and if you even ask questions, the cancel culture gets after you. And we got to be able to ask questions. I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. When we get in the situation where we have answers we can't question, we're in a real bad spot. You got to be able to say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right to me.
That's right. And you know, I talk about it in the book. The other thing to add to that, Dr. Phil, is it's okay to not know. Like I think that, you know, human beings, we fear what we don't understand so much that we try to make sense of everything, and everything has to have an explanation behind it. Everything has to have a reason behind it. Sometimes it's just simply okay to be like, I don't know why that is the way it is. And even if I'm sitting down, you know, listening to somebody explain it, I don't care if it's a scientist or, you know, somebody who's done a lot of research. If it still doesn't sound right to me, I can still be like, well, that doesn't sound right. I don't, you know, I don't disagree with that person, but I don't necessarily believe it either. I just don't know. And it's fine saying I don't know. It's very freeing.
Yeah, it's like convince me. I used to do a lot of litigation work. You know, we would help select juries and prepare witnesses to testify. We called it CEO-itis. We'd tell CEOs they felt like they had to know everything. We'd say the most powerful answer in your arsenal is, I don't know. Because they'd say, well, okay, so how does this happen down here? And they don't know, but they feel like they should know. And we say, no, your answer is, I don't know. And they'd say, oh, you mean to tell me you're the CEO of Coca-Cola or you're the CEO of General Motors and you don't know? Yes, counselor, that's right. I don't know. But I tell you what I do know, I have a lot of confidence in the people who do handle that, and I'm sure they'll have answers for you if you ask them. That's all right. You got to say. Then you're done. Once you say, I don't know, they can't ask you another damn thing.
That's right. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I respect people who say that. I respect people who I hear say, I don't know a lot. And I respect people who I hear ask one simple question, and that's why.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember I interviewed Larry King one time, and Larry King said to me, the most important question you can always ask in an interview or in a conversation is why. Yeah. And I was like, yo, that is so true, because nowadays the why I really want to know is the intention. I want to know, what is your intention? Why do you want to do what it is that you want to do? Or why do you believe what it is that you believe? Why did you say what it is you said? Not because I'm trying to be judgmental, because I truly want to know.
Yeah. I spent most of my life since I was 12 years old trying to figure out why people do what they do and don't do what they don't do. If you understand that, I don't care who you're dealing with, whether they're selling you a car or they're wanting to do surgery on you, or it's just somebody you met, if you can understand why they do what they do and don't do what they don't do, you have a huge leg up in this world.
That's right. I agree wholeheartedly. I think the study of people, you know, the study of human nature is something that we've all gotten away from. And then I do think it's because of these devices. I do think it's because of these smartphones, you know, because of these laptops. There's not enough human interaction anymore, you know, with people. And being that you don't have enough human interaction with people anymore, it's like, man, you really don't know what people are thinking. Like, when is the last time you literally just I challenge people to do this. Sit down and go talk to somebody that you don't agree with. Like somebody that has an opinion that or a view that is different than yours. Just go sit down and ask them why they feel what they feel, and don't listen with the intent to reply. Just listen with the intent to understand and see where they're coming from.
And when you're done, you don't have to hate them.
That's right.
You go buy them a hot dog. Say, hey, I didn't enjoy the conversation. It was painful to hear. I'm glad we had it. Let's go get a hot dog and talk about something else now. I mean, that's what we need to do that we're not doing.
Man, I agree with you. That's why the subtitle of the book is Why Small Talk Sucks, because that's what I mean when I say we're not even able to have big macro conversations with each other anymore. I don't care what the issue is, Dr. Phil. We should be able to sit down, have a discussion about it, and whether we agree or disagree, we should be able to, go back to our respected communities, go back to our respected corners, so to speak, and not want to kill each other.
Yeah. I've been critical of this young generation. I think that they're kind of pampered. I think they're kind of coddled. I don't think they're prepared for the real world. So today, just before I came over here to sit down with you, I did a show about positive Gen Z, Alpha generation examples, and it was amazing. I had on a young guy from North Carolina, one of the fraternity guys that protected the flag when they took down the American flag and put up the Palestinian flag. He was one of the guys that said, no, that ain't happening. You're not taking down the American flag on my campus. And he put it back up and stood there and fought to protect it at the University of North Carolina. Then we had a young kid that has put out 600,000 flags on the graves of veterans. He's been doing it since he was 10 years old. We had young people like that are getting out and doing something. And I try to tell these kids, nothing great is ever going to happen to you on the screen of your telephone. Nothing great is ever going to happen to you looking at the screen of your telephone. Those things came out in like 07, 08 when they got prolific. And that's when kids stopped living their lives and started watching other people live their lives. And sure enough, in 09, 010, we saw the highest levels of depression, anxiety, and loneliness among young people since we started keeping records.
Wow.
And they have an average of less than one good friend. They just don't interact anymore.
That's not a coincidence.
No, it is not.
That's not a coincidence. My thing that I've been saying is that I think that there's some type of science that people might realize in the future of how these devices are keeping us looking down. I think there's something to looking to the sky. Like, think about, when we were young, they told us, keep your head up.
Yeah.
There was a great song by Sounds of Blackness, called Be Optimistic. As long as you keep your head to the sky. Tupac had Keep Your Head Up. Like, it was all about keeping your head up. You look to the sky and pray, look at the stars, look at the moon, look at the sun. Nowadays, people are glued down like this. I tell my 4 daughters, my oldest is 15. She's about to be 16. I tell her all the time, when we're at her, because she's a cheerleader, and we'll be at her cheerleading competitions, and all the kids are just looking down at their phones. Or like, we'll be at the dinners for the cheerleaders, and I'm like, yo, put y'all phones away. There's all of y'all it's 10 of y'all at the table, and all of y'all are looking down at your phones. Yo, look each other in the eyes. Keep your head up. Keep your chin up. Like, there's something to it, Dr. Phil. I don't know what it is, but there's something to it.
I can tell you what it is. It's an addiction. It lights up the same pathways in the brain that opioids do, the same pathways in the brain that heroin does.
Wow. So imagine telling a kid, now all you got to do is tell a kid, if you want to have an advantage in the world, just simply look up.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Hey, talk about chapter 6, DEI. You say not that one, but talk about DEI.
Well, it kind of goes to what you were just talking about, with the younger generation, man. And it's not even just the younger generation. I think social media has just created, this delusion, this entitlement, and this idiocracy. That's what I call DEI: delusion, entitlement, and idiocracy. So you have all these delusional people running around, living lives that, that's not even theirs, portraying images that's not even there, walking around with the mask on. The entitlement comes from the people watching the delusional people. Because when you watch the delusional people and you watch these people that are pretending, like the people that are pretending to go on these lavish trips, or the kids that are pretending to be on private jets, or the kids pretending to be in these, fancy cars and having all of this money, Now a sense of entitlement comes into you because you feel like, well, if they got it, I should have it. And then the idiocracy of it all is that everybody's stupid. like everybody's dumb for believing this. So that's the era that I feel like we're in. We're in this era of delusion, entitlement, and idiocracy. And I honestly, it scares me because I don't know where it ends, Dr. Phil. I really don't.
Well, how do we get people out of the victim mentality? I guess that's the thing that bothers me the most. It's not just one group. There's a new victim class. It seems like every single day somebody has found a way to put on the victim hat and ask the world to take care of them.
Well, you won't get them out of that mentality because, that mentality can be monetized now. So, like you got to think that's just really some people's thing. Like some people get online every day and they look for problems or they look for things to be offended by. Like you have to go out of your way a lot of times to go on social media and basically, trauma scavenger hunt. You're literally looking for something to be offended about because once you take that thing and amplify it on your platform, you're going to get the engagement that you want that day. You're going to get the attention that you want that day. You might be monetizing some of these platforms, so you're going to get a couple of dollars from it, for that day. So I don't think that you'll ever get them out of it on social media. I think in the real world, we just got to keep doing what we're doing, and that's going out there and like really pouring into people in a real way. Like I go out there and I talk to people in my community. I do philanthropy. I do things like donate scholarship. I got a scholarship fund at my mother's alma mater, South Carolina State University. Called the Ford Family Scholarship Fund, and I donated $250,000 to South Carolina State University for people who were either majoring in English. Because my mother was an English teacher, so if you're majoring English, you qualify for it. If you major in something in the mental health space, you qualify for it. And if you major in communications, you qualify for it because I'm a media personality. And so for me, it's just like, I would rather provide opportunities to people so they can't play the victim card. When people have opportunities that are presented to them and they are willing to take advantage of those opportunities, then you can't play the victim card. I don't think so anyway.
I have a problem with people that talk about equality of outcome. I don't have a problem with talking about trying to get equality of opportunity. We don't have equality of opportunity in this country, but it should be number one on our to-do list. But this equality of outcome, to me, is a scary concept. If you got some guy at home in a beanbag eating Cheetos all day, and he's going to get the same outcome as some guy that's out there working 14 hours a day, busting his ass, and they're going to have the same outcome, I got a problem with that.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that you should get back in life, what you put into it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like, in this country, yes, we all know that there's a lot of systemic obstacles, that different communities face. And, every day we should fight, to remove those obstacles and tear down a lot of those obstacles. But I still think for the most part, you get back what you put in, in this society.
Yeah, the hill's steeper to climb for some than others, and we need to do what we can to flatten that out and get it the same for everybody. But if I got a hill to climb, I'd rather climb it in America than somewhere else. I can tell you that for sure.
Oh, absolutely. That's why, when it comes to a lot of these elected officials, man, I laugh sometimes because it's really not that difficult, right? Like the reality is all humans want, every single human on this planet, but I'm only going to speak for America right now. Every single human in America wants two things: financial security and safety.
Yep.
That's it. That's it. I want some upward mobility and I want to feel safe. And I know that there's somebody out there listening to me saying, well, what about education? What about healthcare? All of that falls under financial security.
Of course it does.
All of it. If I got a couple of dollars, I can afford my healthcare. I can afford to go to school. I can afford to have some food on the table, a roof over my head. People want upward mobility, financial security, and they want to feel safe. That's it. Secure. I want to feel safe. I want my kids to feel safe, my grandkids to feel safe. If you can, provide people with that, then they're gonna support you and vote you in every single second of the day.
Yeah. How come they can't figure that out and focus on those things instead of the stuff that they keep peddling? Because they're trying to buy votes. They don't have to buy votes if they just deliver the things that people care about.
Simple. It's really that simple, and they complicate things, man. Like it's financial security and upward mobility. Anything that anybody that provides that, you'll have people like what President Biden is doing with the student loan debt. That is providing financial relief for people. What Donald Trump did when he was in office, during COVID, even though it took a pandemic to do that, the stimulus checks, the PPP loans, people remember that to this day. Because you know why, Dr. Phil? Because people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And at a time when everybody's back was against the wall and people were doing, really bad economically and people were losing their jobs and couldn't even go to work, they'll never forget getting that check in the mail with his name on it.
Yep, that's right.
And it's sad that millions of people had to die, to get that check, but they'll never forget that. So that just shows you what people really need: financial security and safety. That's it.
Yeah, and safety is something that a lot of people are asleep at the switch about. I just did a show that said we get 97% of our antibiotics from China.
Damn.
97% of our antibiotics come from China. Now, what
97?
97. Now, what happens if they decide, nah, not going to ship them over there? We'd be in a hell of a mess. Our enemy is providing 97% of our antibiotics.
What if they decide not only, we're not going to ship it over there, what if they decide to engage in some type of chemical warfare?
Exactly. And then we don't have anything to fight it with, and we don't have a stockpile, and we don't have the infrastructure to fight back. And it is hard. I get it's a tough problem. It's hard to fight back when they were paying 47 cents an hour in their factories. We can't do that. It's hard to fight that. That's what I mean when I say that's been going on for at least 20 years. We don't really have problem solvers trying to solve these problems, or I think we'd have figured out an alternative.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, maybe you and I should take it over.
I like focusing on what I can actually change. Like I believe in the serenity prayer where it says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I know where I can actually enact change. I know I can enact change in my, community in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, or in Charleston, South Carolina. I know I can enact change, in Jersey or New York by doing different initiatives, whether it's partnering with the food bank in Harlem, which I do. Because it's simple, like I said, it's simple things. Like, man, when you go, and by the way, Dr. But there's people already doing all of this work. So all it takes is somebody like me or you to come in and help amplify the work that people are already doing. Like I have a nonprofit called the Mental Wealth Alliance, and we're trying to provide, 10 million, Black and brown people therapy over the next 5 years for free, right? But I'm partnered with people who already do the work, like Dr. Alfie Breland Noble. So I'm just helping to amplify what they're already doing. Or the food bank in Harlem, they're already there providing free meals for people. They're already there providing groceries for people. So I'm just there to amplify, the work that they're already doing. I was just in South Carolina, with former Mayor Tecklenburg, and I was down at the shelter, and I was just seeing what they're doing with the homeless there. And I'm going to be sponsoring breakfast for them for a year. And when he told me the number that it costs to do that, it actually pissed me off because I'm like, this is nothing for the local government to cover.
Yeah,
nothing. So why, like literally nothing. So why aren't they doing it?
It's amazing when you work with some of these food banks, they can get 8 meals out of $1. It's astounding because they have a lot of in-kind. They get day-old bread. They get stuff that's just perfectly good. We eat day-old bread at home every day, 3-day, 4-day-old bread at home. It's not like it's a bad thing, but that's what you and I can do. People ask me all the time, am I ever going to get into politics? My answer is not just no, it's hell no. I can do a lot more and have a bigger impact from the outside in than the inside out.
I 100% agree. And I mean, I think I have a lot of politicians. I have a lot of politicians that I associate with. And I'd rather just sit around and have these conversations with them and, connect them with the real people who have their feet on the ground, so they can hear from these individuals, so they can know, the things that they should be doing while they're in office. And you got some good ones around the country doing some really great things. I like what Governor Wes Moore, just did in Maryland, by pardoning everybody who has the misdemeanor marijuana offenses. I like what Governor Josh Shapiro is doing in Pennsylvania in regards to criminal justice reform and probation reform. So you got some people around the country that's doing some really good things.
Yeah, we really do. And we need to be sure and call those people out and let people know that they're doing a good job and support them when they do.
That's right.
You and I should talk more often. We don't talk enough. We do it every once in a while, but we need to talk more often than we do.
Man, I would love that, Dr. Phil. I absolutely would. I always appreciate the conversation. Certain people you have conversations with, they make you feel sane. And you're one of them.
Well, I feel the same way. Listen, the book is Get Honest or Die Lying, Why Small Talk Sucks by Charlamagne the God. This book, I'm telling you, you think when you have somebody on your show that you're supposed to say nice things about their book. That's true. Of course you do. You don't get people on to insult their book. But you guys know me. All I would have to do is mention this book at the top and the bottom, and that would be it. I would have checked the box. I'm not checking the box here. This book is good. It's thoughtful. It's written about the things that you're experiencing in your life from somebody that gets real and has the authenticity to give a voice to the things that will be thought-provoking for you. It will make you think. It will make you sit down and say, well, where do I stand on that? What am I saying to myself about that? And one of the most important things he says is, you're not lying to other people, you're lying to yourself, and then you're just giving it to them. So it's so important. You did a good job on this one. Not that you didn't on the others, but this one really rang true with me, and it couldn't be more timely. It absolutely couldn't be more timely. So congratulations on this book.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. I really appreciate it. It means the world coming from you.
Well, listen, we're going to put this book up. If you guys want a link to it where you can go directly to get the book, I'm going to put it on drphil.com, on meritstreetmedia.com. Everywhere that you guys find me, you're going to find a link to this book so you can get it. Like I said, buy 2 copies because you're going to wish you had another one to give to somebody you care about. So I hope you'll do that. We're going to stay in touch more often, okay, my friend?
Let's do it, Dr. Phil. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Right. Peace.